Hello, everyone. All right, so hello, everyone. I'm Rick, and Rio and Brianna and I will be doing a presentation on AI problems and solutions. And I will introduce everyone soon. But yeah, like the big thing, like I said, I'm Rick. I'm a software engineer and a professor at FCC. And the purpose of this talk is we heard everyone before, we heard different problems, concerns, questions, and a lot of these led to discussions outside of or after our presentations from before. And so we decided to do a nod to that and kind of like focus on all those questions and stuff like that. So our team, we work on the ZTC program, so the Zero Textbooks Costs Initiative, and we've been working on AI Canvas Chat, which we use in our classroom. Me and Rio have been using in our classroom. We'll mention that a little bit as we go along. And yeah, let's go ahead and introduce everyone else.
Hi everyone, my name is Brianna. I'm a student at Fresno City College. This is going to be my fourth semester, and I'm also an ETC tutor over in the tutorial center for Rick and Rio's classes.
That's awesome. Okay, so I think many of you may know who I am, but it's always good to introduce ourselves. I've been doing this for a few years. My name is Rio Waller, and I teach in CIT. Specifically, I teach coding, HTML and CSS. And this is a very interesting time to be in this space of AI. I mean, we're not going to today talk about the latest things that are happening, although, we're always interested in talking about those things. So seek us out and we can chat about that. But the conversation we're going to have today is about the kind of areas, like Rick said, that we felt like we didn't get enough time to talk about and we thought would be hopefully helpful to you.
Yeah, and to that nod too, the dynamic, and we'll talk more about that as we talk about the overview and etiquette. But one thing that we're doing things a little bit different this time. A lot of the things that, a lot of the questions that you have and concerns will be in the chat, and we're gonna, aggregate all of that, and we'll be discussing that towards the end. So this time we're gonna try to, focus on our presentation, what we have, and as you have questions, if you have comments, please add them in the chat so that we can look at that and talk about them later.
Yeah, and to start for our overview for our presentation, we are first going to talk about and ask the audience how we feel about AI, and then we're going to transition over to our discussion of our presentation, talking about different problems and solutions like cheating, comprehension, and then balancing human and AI interactions. And then after our conclusion, we're going to open the floor and then have a um, questions and discussions with the audience for the remainder of the presentation. And then, like Rick said, we're going to be utilizing the Zoom chat for engagement and questions. So as we um, ask questions directed towards the audience, we kindly ask that you use the Zoom chat to respond. And then if you have questions throughout the presentation, we'll also keep those aggregated to talk about them near the end. And then also we kindly ask that you remain muted until the time slots are for open floor discussions and questions.
Cool, sounds good.
And so our first question that we wanted to ask you, the audience, is how do we feel about AI? So this can be directed as a general sentiment about AI. This could be geared towards the classroom. This could be problems that you have with AI. And we ask that you write a sentence in the Zoom chat. Just what are your current thoughts about AI?
Got a little. Yeah, it's definitely overwhelming. I would definitely say that. And yeah, you'll hear in my presentation a little bit about my experience with that. And so, do we want to move on to the word cloud now?
No, 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 no.
Okay,
No, no. Yeah, we don't have enough time yet.
okay, gotcha. Okay.
Because that's going to take a little bit, guys. They're coming in so rapidly. I'm trying to grab them as fast as I can.
Woo! All right, that's like 80
Okay.
plus people. Go for
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. So keep
Yeah,
keep keep chatting.
And
yeah.
yeah, so there's AI as a tool, but a lot of our students misuse it because it's very easy to go further than just using it as a tool, but just taking over completely all of our work, right? A useful tool. It is scary, seeing that it's here to stay. It's not something that just came and left.
Yeah, I do like yeah that you're mentioning like useful tool and to use it responsibly. We hope that we touch on those today about like different methodologies. When when I'm talking about comprehension in AI, like what we can do differently. Those are, these are things that we're going to talk about as well. I think another thing that I saw in the chat was I'm going to present a video and Rio and I actually found it about the same time, which are, I guess, the algorithm gods gave it to us, and we both were like, "Hey, check out this video." And when I show the video, I think it would be a really good video to show in your classroom for students when we talk about like AI usage and stuff like that. Like, I know every instructor has like different thoughts about AI and how they want to use it. I think this is it's a good tool to kind of, it's a good video to kind of give students, the like the warnings, like, also to kind of see, like, to show them how, what are the process behind it and how it affects you as a student while you're using AI.
Yeah, I do like seeing some of the comments where it's like it does make jobs a lot difficult or dif more difficult because especially for online instructors that you can't distinguish what is written by AI and what is written by a student, and it's starting to blur that lines of are we are these actual student answers or is this plagiarism or cheating in a way?
Yeah, I see the software development question. I'm just like, oh, I want to go into software, because that's my field and stuff like that. And you know, yeah, I mean, work, right? We talk about, like, I was talking to my buddy who works at a different university and how, do we need as many people, or, for certain things, like, is there a replacement, coming? I'm not sure about that. The video kind of talks a little bit about that as well, about like what it means to, how we are as people and what we contribute in this time of AI. I'll talk about, like, yeah, you know, there's a lot to discuss with that. And I think that, like, um, as students become more aware of AI and how they're using it, there's a way to empower yourself to ask the right questions, right? And we'll talk more about that theme as we go along.
Okay, we're getting close to give me just a second. We're almost there for the first draft of having a little problem with the PowerPoint, which, gotta love
Mhm.
that, right? So, Rick, just go to the next slide and see what shows up.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. 1 second. I might have to refresh again, right?
Yeah, you
Okay.
might, but
Oh, there we go.
yeah,
I see it.
yeah, go back and present and let's see if it comes to it. Just had a hard time. I think the way I pasted it didn't like it. Oh, good. Okay. So I'll keep going with getting these, but here's the ones for the first draft.
Oh yeah, so scary is a big it's a AI is a big concern, right? But it also can be helpful. It's uncharted territory. It's kind of sweeping through and changing how we do a lot of things.
Yeah,
It's
like, yeah, I think what's scary is, like, as you learn more about it, I think we've had these little, like, this is where the nod to these chats were, like, where it seems overwhelming. Like, people have ideas that, like, that AI is like somehow anthropomorphic, or that, it's more sentient than it really is. So, and then you look at the math, you look at, like, the implementation of how AI was built and stuff like that. And, it kind of demystifies a lot of that, I hope. If, I know this talk is not about that specifically, but yeah, I see that scary is pretty big up there. So, um, yeah, so hopefully we'll relieve some of that scariness in a different way in our talk. Um,
Or it'll
People
give
said,
us
yeah,
things to focus on for a different presentation if we don't
yeah.
cover them now.
So yeah, hate is a really strong word, but it's there. I get it. I totally get, even though I work with AI and I'm a software engineer that uses AI, and even in my projects, I've done some really crazy things that like people aren't doing right now, as far as like the development pipeline and stuff like that. People think that I'm just like I love it, but I have my criticisms, and I don't like to use the word hate personally. But yeah, there's a love dislike association when it comes, for my own personal opinion about it, because I think a lot of people see me as some kind of spokesman for AI sometimes. And I'm like, no, I have a lot of criticisms. I usually, yeah, if we have those conversations, if people want to stay afterwards, we could talk more about what that looks like. But I totally get it. And like, I'm not here to just promote like how good AI is. Like, a lot of it is, what we're focusing on is how we can work with AI and some of the solutions that we could come up with, using already existing like, pedagogical structures and stuff like that as well.
Awesome. And I think with that, we can move on to the start of the presentation,
Yep, for sure.
like the discussion.
I'll continue. If we want to, we can come back to this. I'm still capturing sentiment. So,
No, and it's great to hear everybody's sentiment because I know a big problem that in some of the questions that have come through is distinguishing what is written by AI and what's written by students, and talking about cheating as a problem or with AI. And when we talk about AI, we brought up that AI is here to stay and it's affecting how students cheat in the classroom. And a lot of questions come up. Are students comprehending or understanding um, what is being taught in the classroom? How does can cheating or the use of AI lead to that comprehension? And how can educators pick up on cheating? And how should educators respond to cheating or the usage of AI? And when I think Rick brought it up earlier, but education is always changing, and this is leading to assignments needing to be rethought. And if you can easily find an answer, that question should change. If you can easily search it up on your phone, have that material, we need to find workarounds that students aren't able to just find the answers online. But that can't work for all classes, such as like fixed memorization subjects like math. That content can't change. So how do we utilize tools to combat AI cheating? What are some solutions to those problems that occur? Which we'll be talking about. But first, I wanted to talk about why and how students might be cheating from a student's perspective. And how do students cheat? Well, students can use their LLM of choice. AI is very accessible now, so they can use ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, all these different LLMs to just throw any kind of question out, and the LLM is going to try to generate an expected answer for their question. But it's also easily accessed through their phone or a separate device like a laptop, tablet, even their like desktop PCs. So how do students cheat? It's easy if students are easily able to cheat through like an assignment, like a quiz. If I have a desktop PC, I can just pull up on my phone for quiz on Canvas, and it's not tracking my phone search results, for instance, right? How do we solve those issues? And then also, students are using it to cheat through problem solving, paraphrasing, rewriting, and complete assignment generation. They're making these computer answers seem more human. And why would students cheat? Well, a lot of students feel pressured to use it. They might think everyone's doing it. They have an expectation for where their grades need to be. So they might lean into using AI, or they just don't have enough time to put towards an assignment, and they feel like they still have to have some social expectation of how their assignment should be. So they'll generate an answer and submit it. And the issue with AI is how fast we can get those answers. It's like a Google search, but enhanced. It answers your question directly. And even now, Google searches are having AI search results come out when you post that question. So it's accessible anywhere. You go ahead onto your phone, type in a question, more than likely that result is going to be an AI generated answer to that question. And there's also this perceived low risk factor to it. If students feel that everyone's doing it, it might not, how can the professors catch if everybody's doing it right? There's this low risk associated with it and this lack of confidence. Maybe they don't understand the subject at hand, so they're leaning into AI to get uh, uh, get answers for it. So, but that's when we talk about, does cheating or the usage of AI go into comprehension and understanding? Can we, as students, lean into AI for summary and go into that comprehension? So, yeah, thank you. So when we talk about solutions for cheating and AI in the classroom, how can we, as professors, can we get around that? And requiring proof of work, redesigning assessments to emphasize process, drafts, and reflections. And this has been shown in a lot of my classes that I've been taking, such as math. I took an online math class, and a way that the professor ensured that I was um, doing my own work was we had to take a picture uh, of our notes for the math quiz, and we would have to submit it alongside the actual quiz itself. And that's requiring that proof of work. The professor is able to go and see that I was working through the problems. Same with, I was taking a communications class, and they required both the outline, the first draft, the final draft, all these different steps for the process shows how the students are working through the problem and not just relying on AI. There's also other solutions like monitoring student activity and their active screen time that a lot of Canvas features are actually built in that allow us to track how long a student's been on a page, on a quiz, for example. Are they actively on the quiz tab? Are they moving from to a different tab? And then we'll track and mark that. And those are ways to check if our students are engaged with the quiz or if they're going to outside resources and trying to cheat. And then also using AI to check work and balancing professors' intuition. What that means is that we have like these third-party tools. I know somebody in the chat posted it earlier where it's like Turnitin, but Turnitin uh, isn't always reliable and as a source, and that's where we have to balance that professor's intuition when we see those like sudden jumps in consistency. Is a student all of a sudden answering completely different than they did at the beginning of the semester? And there's also built-in submission tools in Canvas that check for similarity scores. Are they using outside sources and copy and pasting into their own words? And that's where things like similarity score on Canvas show you that and provide a percentage of how similar is this paper to what's out there on the web. Um, and a big balance is RSI, and I think I want to throw this back at Rick or Rio to touch on RSI and building that gap for students and professors when it comes to using AI in their work.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm still capturing sentiment. So, Rick, if you can handle it, because it's still coming in. So
Yeah, I mean, I will be talking about that more, like as far as like comprehension and like figuring out like if the student has comprehended something, right? Do you want me to move to my slide now as we
Or
go?
she
yeah,
can.
actually, let's move to the next slide,
Okay.
and then we'll talk about some examples. So I there so some cheating solution examples for usage of AI. there's different ways to approach how a professor maybe uh, should talk to the student after detecting AI usage. And one way is discussing the content of the AI used if caught cheating. So bringing the student in person if this is an online class and, hey, I think your work is used with AI. Can you come in and we can discuss this and see if you're actually comprehending the or understanding the subject material? This doesn't only help the professors see if they're retaining the information, but it also humanizes that interaction between professors and students, and also builds onto that RSI, bridging that RSI connection for students and professors. There's also apps through Canvas where we have monitoring how long students spend on the assignment, and then also that similarity score that we talked about earlier, where it checks for plagiarism and AI usage. And then also more extreme examples that have been used in the past where it's requiring testing centers or using something like Lockdown Browser, which was very big um, in the COVID area where everything switched to online, um, where Lockdown Browser tracked eye movement, mouse movement, even like checked what applications they had on their computer. And um, while that may seem very invasive on the students' end, that as a on the professor's end, that helped ensure that there was no cheating. Testing centers also don't allow phones to come in, and if they monitor even like if you go up and use the bathroom and check their times. But those are more extreme examples, and it doesn't work in every scenario, especially for online classes where it needs to be accessible. Maybe a student is taking it outside of um, the class outside of the city, or they have accessibility needs. It doesn't make it easy for these students to come into testing centers or lockdown browser, but I thought they would be worth mentioning that these are very extreme solutions that help out the professors, but on the students end, it can be a lot harder, and make a lot more lose a lot more trust on the students end. But I want to hand it off to Rick now to go over comprehension and how sometimes cheating can lead into um, cheating, or the usage of AI can lead into comprehension.
Yeah,
You know
so
what? Could we do
oh,
this?
go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Hey, go back and I got the final one. Could you
Oh, right, I have to
refresh
refresh.
this real
Yeah,
quick? And this
sorry.
was the sentiment from, yep. Yeah. Oh, did it get it?
I mean, it looks different, but it's
Okay. So that if you want to, we can provide this later as well, and I could paste it in, but and maybe I didn't get it. Anyway, sorry, Rick. Sorry to interrupt you. I'll make sure that's in there.
yeah, no worries. And just keep in mind, everyone, this is our first time doing the presentation. The second one was probably gonna always, the usually is a lot better. We work out all these things, we get together, and so I apologize for any confusion or anything else. But yeah, we're doing the best we can, to do the best we can. We're learning as we go along, and we're comprehending what we're doing, hopefully, and that's part of what my talk is about. So like when Breanna talked about cheating, I noticed that, and as we talked, even when Rio jumps in, like a lot of this is a lot of overlap, right? So like, when you think about when someone cheats, like do they actually comprehend the material? And there's a lot of different ways that we measure those things. And so for me, like when I look at comprehension, I come from a cognitive science background, so I think about like cognitive frameworks, that how we, what kind of mental processes we have, information process, how the brain constructs memory, how does that get solidified. But but I think I would like, if you can, to put in the chat, what does comprehension mean to you? And like, how do you measure comprehension in the classroom, and like maybe based on the context of the classes that you teach and stuff like that. I'd be curious to to just kind of like hear your thoughts on that. And there's a lot of different frameworks, like the schema theory is a big thing where what are the schematics, what are the frameworks that people have, and how do they draw from their experiences and everything else to make these kinds of mental models. And as educators, like, how do we improve those mental models? How do we add to those mental models? How do we synthesize those models, to help like facilitate comprehension? And so like the social cultural, like in college, I studied cultural psychology, and that was like my research focus. And I think that like there are a lot of like cultural and social aspects that shape understanding, meaning, all of those things as well. The one thing I did want to touch on, and I think this goes into like my solutions a little bit more, is like the process versus product. When you think about the process is like the actions that we take, right? Like when Brianna was talking about how do we stop cheating? How do we do all these things? There's a lot of different process that we can do. For writing, you can have the students write like an actual outline in their own words so that like they start off with that and then move on to the final product later. But that whole process, I'm going to talk more about it. The product is more the final product, right? Like the SLOs, like what do you measure to show that there are comprehension and stuff like that. So yeah, I see some comments in comprehension. Thank you for that. And like I said, each discipline measures comprehension in a different way. I put it at the top, it's a multidimensional cognitive and social process. There's a lot that goes on with comprehension. And in my classes, like that was something that like, the reason why I chose this topic is because I'm really like fascinated about like, you know, will my students comprehend? Will they understand like these coding concepts that we bring out? Like they're hard. And Rio has helped me with the curriculum with all of that, and I'm happy for that. But I start to see like the techniques that Rio used and the techniques that I'm using, and how there's like the part of it of practice, muscle memory, outlines, planning, and I think that a lot of that is really important. And then like how to measure that in the end. So I'll talk a little bit more about how I what I did there. And so yeah, basically the one thing that like that stuck with me with this is like, the comprehension, like how and why. Like why do we do this, right? But I also I sort of reflect on myself. And I think that like with everyone out here, if you want to comment, like how much do you use AI, right? And how much has it affected you? Because this presentation, like I made a joke, I can't remember where I put it, but it's just basically like, I know now that I know less or that I lost something there, like to take it more from a meta standpoint, right? Like with the cognition and metacognition when you're thinking about comprehension, I was thinking about wow, okay. I was thinking about how I'm writing this presentation. Like I could have relied solely on AI if I wanted to, because maybe I didn't have enough time. This time around, I spent a lot of time trying to read articles and try to get as prepared. But the thing is, I started to realize, and I think many of you guys might share the same point with me, is that I'm losing that aspect of under like that grit that comes into play, when you're writing, when you're planning these kinds of presentations. Like I'm outsourcing a lot of like my cognition. I'm outsourcing that part. And so I needed to take some time to reflect on that and try to go back to the beginning, the basics of like, and this is like, for students as well, is like students need to have that background, those outlines, those plans and stuff like that. And I'll talk more about that. But sorry, I want to kind of give an overview of why I did this and what was important to me, and just looking at it from a meta perspective. Like this was, to be honest, this was hard because I'm so reliant on AI. Like to be honest, I'm gonna admit it. I'm very vulnerable right now, and because I don't like to
We
admit
got
this.
you. We got
Yeah.
you. We
Thank
got
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to save space. Thank you. Appreciate it. But yeah, so I wanted to, kind of touch on that. And so a little bit of how students use AI. Brianna kind of touched to a lot of these things, but, basically, more, a lot of students copy paste, right? It's easy to just copy paste, summarize your experience, blah, blah, blah. And then it's just easy to just go and copy paste, right? And a lot of the times, like, students can generate answers without even looking at the reading material. Like you might assign a reading material and then have these questions, and the students can just like copy paste the questions into a chat, don't even need to read anything, And, there's a lot of context in large language models that they'd be able to get the answer without even having to look at the reading material, especially if it's been trained by a large language model, right? Some of you instructors might have more specific things that like might be harder for a large language model to detect, but that, those are different kinds of edge cases and potential outliers. Um, I think the other thing is like a lot of students seek like explanations, instead of going in depth with those concepts, right? Like, you know, um, it's easy to kind of mimic, what an image, like what the explanation is. Easy to mimic cognition now, and I think we'll talk about that in the videos that I share. And so again, why I think Brianna touched to those, before. It's faster, it's easier. You have a tight deadline, boom, you're in. Like you made it at the 11:59 deadline. And like I mentioned before, like, why do they do it? I mean, it's part of the ecosystem now. It's ubiquitous. I went to a wedding in Monterrey, Mexico, and I met a couple of college students there that were just talking about AI and like, their thoughts on it. Surprisingly, they don't like to use it or use it as less as they can. But, instructors have even approached them about like, hey, was that written in AI? And they're like, no, this is just how I talk, or, this is the methodology. But there, a lot of students are even scared, of like submitting work, or at least the students that I met. This is anecdotal, but so there's a lot of there's a lot of issues with all of that, but we'll talk about that later. But yes, it's a part of our ecosystem, and I think Brianna touched on this too. Immediate results, these are and getting higher grades. If you can think of any other reasons why, I'd love to hear them too. Like that'd be nice, like, just put them in the chat and stuff like that. But I'm gonna go ahead and move on to so this
Hey
is a
Rick,
video. I'm sorry, go
before you
ahead.
do that, I think we're actually doing fine on time. You're getting some really good questions and comments about comprehension in the
Awesome.
chat.
Okay.
I mean, I'm kind of just looking over them. I don't have a sentiment for it, but it's really good to see some of the comments. I think they align pretty much with what you're talking about
Awesome. No, yeah.
comprehension, right? Being able to explain a topic or answer clearly. And this is interesting to another person, which is something I'll touch on when we get to the next topic, right? But then it talks about how AI does certain things, very easily for them, is what you're saying. It's easy for them to do. And then Matt had a good comment about the ability is to mentally call up a technique or idea to a timely in a timely manner that calls for knowledge to be complete, sometimes useful task related to the topic of teaching. So anyway, I don't know if you want to, you're welcome to or continue on, but I think there's some really good interaction. And by the way, we could almost call this chat right now, instead of RSI, RAI, which would be
Mhm.
repetitive attendee interaction, because there's some really good interaction here just to play off RSI. But I really appreciate the interactions that we're seeing in there.
No, I love that. I love that. Like, and yeah, you're talking to those things, and that's big on RSI. And I mentioned that in my solutions as well, as like as far as like how I use RSI for that. And yeah, like, like it's yeah, like the whole like comprehension, like a student's ability to recall something, right? Like what Matthew was saying, to the ability for them to understand those ideas. And and I talk about that in my next slide about how Socrates, during that time, you know, Socrates was a big proponent of thought, right? Like to understand something, to comprehend something, you should be able to talk about it, and to be able to have those thoughts and disseminate the knowledge that you can prove that you understand it, right? And Socrates was actually against writing. So this is like the revolutionary thing of its time was writing, right? Like we have our revolutionary thing about AI and stuff like that. And Socrates didn't particularly say that writing would replace thought, but he was a big proponent and criticism of writing because he felt like it would take away from what is comprehension, take away from the thoughts that are behind those things. And I think that like that ability to be able to use your thought and use your words to be able to show that you do that with writing. I think a good example is AI, right? You can generate something and it shows you the writing that you understand it, but not really the case, if you actually look back and actually check somebody for comprehension. That's something that, I mentioned in one of my classes and one of the courses, one of the assignments I brought out. And so I think Nancy mentions about legal cases. Okay, yeah, dig into a case.
I saw a good one come up
Yeah,
from Alan was, and other people have mentioned this too, is what if students cheat on all of those
Process
processes?
steps. Yeah,
Yeah,
process
process
steps.
steps. So like if we're having them generate an outline and then create a rough draft, if they're just having AI generate all those for you, how do you distinguish um, that they're using AI or if that's the student themselves? And I like Alan's where um, they have and they're teaching or sorry, so teaching in the future may require us to look for comprehension through other means other than written documents. And I think Rick, you had a good example of that. We were talking about this before the presentation, but how you handled checking for AI and understand or comprehension in your assignments was creating a video in your online class and having them present and share with other students, which instead of just having them write out a response on a discussion board, they had to talk over a video and kind of explain their thought process to other students. And maybe we are moving away from written documents because they're now unreliable to show that it's the comprehension of a student understanding.
yeah, yeah, and I think that touches on like, the video and the themes behind it. Like in a world where the cost of answers is dropping to zero, the value of the question becomes everything, right? Like we all can find the answers like pretty quickly, and like how do we, enhance our comprehension? How do we draw from our own like mental models and our own like special like abilities and our background? And how do we bring that into the table when it comes to these kinds of things? Just like me trying to do this presentation, how do I get away from just knowing that I can have all the answers and have a nice slide and everything ready to go, but like to actually go through that process and to feel human again. Because like as we start to look at, and I think this is the problem, that I mentioned about like, the big thing with AI, the instant answers does affect our comprehension skills that we're talking about. And this could lead to a lot of shallow learning, right? Like, and narrow learning, right? So it's almost like the machine is taking over all of our cognition, and now we're going to be narrow, in our thinking, and we're just going to just focus on, you know, um, relying on these technologies to outsource all of that. So that's something to think about as educators, and also just like for the future of like how we, I still believe the future still has, a lot of like problems. Well, the future's now too, but we need like the demand for, these students at the end are going to get jobs, right? So big demand is like, what kind of skills do these students need, right? Communication skills, right? Being able to problem solve, right? Like we still need a lot of problem solvers, and we need those people to be very versed and very educated in what they're doing. Like for my students, yeah, they could do their whole assignment. They can code everything. Like I coded an application in like minutes, maybe seconds at this point. Like, but like how do the students understand what they're building? Do they know the right questions to ask when they're building these things? Because I don't like to tell my students that yes, like if you're going to go into the coding world, you're probably going to be using AI with coding, but it's important to get those fundamentals, right? So comprehension, comes with those like fundamentals, right? You need to know how to ask those questions in order to be effective while using AI. Because I think a lot of what I've heard from a lot of instructors is, yes, it's a question answer machine. But I think that we, in these little talks that we had on the side and after this, we talked about how, yeah, it's not like we can use AI to empower ourselves and to have those fundamental structures so that we can actually use AI more effectively. Like
Hey,
one thing
Rick,
about, yeah,
Rick,
sorry.
hey, if I could interrupt, you mentioned earlier how AI, using AI to do this presentation impact, like you felt like, but as a software developer, you want to speak a few minutes to how that impacted you?
Yeah, I mean, like I'm still working on the AI Canvas chat, like we mentioned before, and even last night I just didn't want to do anything. Like to be honest, like it was hard to get back into it. There's a lot of for with my job, there's a lot of really complicated things that I need to get done, and AI is still not good enough for that. And I still have to ask the right questions to make it as complicated. And even if I do, still doesn't work. Like it's still like the AI is still telling me, hey, you can, you know what, just forget about that. You don't need to do that. I'm like, okay, so AI is not strong enough yet. And I think that like, yeah, like I was mentioning, like um everything's become a little bit harder. Like I had to take a step back and think like, how much have I been letting AI do all the work for me? And like how much I need to come back and see that like even on a project I was working on recently, the solution was really simple. It was one line. It was just one line that I needed to change. And, before AI, I would have saw that line and go, oh yeah, I just need to fix that. Instead, I spent an hour trying to get AI to fix one line in my code. So I think that talks to some of these, I think that was mentioned a little bit about, but yes, like, um, there's, there's benefits and drawbacks to AI as we talked about before. And that, there's a lot of um we're still learning, and I think this is why like it's good to like add a lot of things in your chat. Like we're still learning about the effects of AI. Like I didn't like
Mhm.
when I started this, I all my predictions that I made about this, just like social media, right? Like just like in 2014 social media started using algorithms, right? Like all of our memes were a collective unification of souls. Like people can have the same memes, but now my parents sit side by side looking at completely different, custom information that's tailored specifically for them and tailored for, ads, right? These are predictions that I did not expect. Like, when I was, growing up in the 90s and like, I had to go to a computer lab, I couldn't afford a computer. And, I was so excited to see that Windows application and, play Mavis Beacon and, just like, oh, wow, like this is going to change the world. I'm going to use this to educate myself, and that's why I'm glad we're doing ZTC. Is that this is the vision that I embodied, right? That we would that technology would empower us and bring us to a different level that was going to really bring us something beautiful. However, we've seen with like how social media has used these algorithms and is very profit driven. AI, like, is it profit driven as well? Yes. We could say that without a shadow of a doubt. So like as educators, I think it's really important to figure like to really um dissect and really look inward. Like here's a technology, like it's not going anywhere, and it's ubiquitous, students are using it. And I think that it's hard to politely kind of suggest that there's a lot of different strategies that we need to implement, and it's a lot of different ways that we can look at how comprehension comes about. What can we do to combat that, right? And the video kind of talks about that in the sense that like we need to do it to know it, right? And this is kind of what
Yeah.
we've been talking about themes, right?
And
Like,
I did provide that video link in the chat for anybody that wants to check it out. And I do give this in my first week or my week 0 for students to watch and to consider as they move into my specific classroom.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, definitely use that. Like, I'm going to be using it in my class as well. Like, this is a really, I might not even have time to go over the videos as much in depth, but I will say that, like, or I could play one really quick so that you can
Yeah,
kind of,
whichever one you feel like, or it's up to you.
yeah, let's do the second one. I think this
Okay.
is going to hit, it's going to hit
We
better.
have strong evidence of this.
Hold on one second. Let me just open this up.
In 2025, researchers at MIT ran an experiment. They had students write essays under three
Hey, quick, Rick,
conditions:
this
a
is the
brain only
interpreter. Do you mind clicking the
Google
closed
search
captioning
assistant.
button?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Let me just go back a little bit. Sorry about that. I think we're around here. A little bit back, sorry. There we go.
25, researchers at MIT ran an experiment. They had students write essays under three conditions: a brain-only group, a Google search-assisted group, and a final group who had ChatGPT. They monitored the brain activity with an EEG while they worked, and the findings were dramatic. Minutes after finishing their essay, when asked to quote a single sentence from their own work, 83% of the ChatGPT group couldn't recall any specific text. And the few who thought they could, 100% of them got it wrong. And the brain activity backed it up. The ChatGPT group showed significantly lower brain activity, specifically neural connectivity. Their brains appeared to dim while working. And then when evaluators looked at the essays, the AI-assisted essays were technically proficient, grammatically correct, structurally sound, but they were consistently described as hollow or soulless.
I'm going to stop it right there. But as you can see, like, it's like your brain on AI, right? Like
Your brain on drugs.
to do that callback from.
Yeah, to do the callback. Yeah.
So yeah, if you have any comments on that, like I recommend.
Ellen's why are they using back to the 1980s? Maybe back then we used our brains. Yeah.
Who knows?
Who knows?
But yeah, so yeah, I really feel like the AI paradox, there is a lot of really good themes in there, a lot of good things to share with like students, and a lot of good things for instructors to kind of reflect on as well. Like, and I think it helps like kind of maybe start jump starting the brainstorming when it comes to like what are some kind of solutions that we can offer, to increase that comprehension, right? I think one of the things that like AI doesn't generate new ideas, like they remix them, right? Like we still have the ability to come up with some crazy stuff that hasn't been trained by AI, like, and that's where the creativity comes in. So that's something to keep in mind when thinking about like, having students generate ideas, brainstorming and stuff like that. Like, yeah, you can like AI can rapidly give you a lot of divergent ideas, but even within that subset, like we still have the ability to really add some extra cognition to that. And I think like touching on like, as far as like solutions are too as well, but like, we should focus on, and Rio will talk more about the human connection is like human first, versus AI first. Like, instead of asking, students to just, go like, or creating curriculum or, assignments where it focuses on, you know, um, to the results, right? More towards the not the process, but the product. I think like maybe going back to old school and having like for example writing, right? Like having them actually outline their writing first, like have them think about those things, have them present that outline because then we're going kinesthetic. We're using different parts before they actually use the AI, right? And so like I mentioned before, humans have very diverse experiences. We can ask very rare questions. And like I said, the value of that question is really important. And like yeah, like we kept mentioning before, like we can use it in the classroom, and I'm going to use it in the classroom. I highly recommend that you guys use it in the classroom as well. So I am getting closer to. I know now. I might need to move it over to Rio soon.
Yeah.
Um, should
Yeah.
I talk about one thing that
I
on
think we're running a
RSI or?
little. Let's see how we finish up, Rick. Is that cool?
Yeah, no, no, yeah, because thank you for all the questions. Like
Yeah, no, it's good.
I went on a whole thing there, so
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah, yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah. We'll provide, matter of fact, I could provide by the time we're done the presentation here that you could look at the word clouds, but we are going to do another one at 2:30 as well. So, Rick, go ahead and move to the next slide.
Yeah, and I'd like to say thank you for everyone. This has been very dynamic. My slides changed drastically even in the last minute. So, thank you for I'm glad that a lot of your questions are guiding our information and like our presentation and experience.
Yeah, cool. So I guess I want to start by saying what an honor it is for me to be on this team of Breanna, Rick, and I, because working together has really helped me from Breanna being at the student facing, looking for help, and Rick also being side by side and looking at the way I teach and him giving his interpretation of it. It's really an honor for me to be here and to share this presentation with these two folks. I just want to say that to start, because I've kind of tried to take a step back because I'm generally the one driving this stuff. And it's been really nice to see the growth that happens when we let people step up and take lead, because we need that. We need people to actually do that. And that gives them that deepening experience that we're talking about here. So I just want to give a shout out to that. So for me, many of you, and I've seen some names here who have been in the previous presentations that I've done. So some of this may be new, some of it not. But I've been using AI for 2 years in my classroom, and it has evolved so much. And using it in the classroom has been very informative for both my use and my understanding of how I can enhance my class, and also how I see students using it, and how can I give those students a authentic learning environment. And I really want to shout out here RSI, because RSI is really something that when I heard that, I and for all of us who were in convocation yesterday, I think we all gained a much better view of why RSI is important. So a shout out to all the work that Sally and Sue and Rebecca now are doing around RSI. And I mean, I meant to actually capture the list of all the tips for RSI, because we could use every one of them here. I mean, and more. So I just think those tools can't be overstated because of their importance. So again, for me, I've been using AI at some level. So I use AI everything from developing course content. And in this case, because we were also given a grant that we are on the 3rd year of, to actually, for Rick and I, and Breanna was actually helpful this last semester in helping us make this tool even better, which I'll show you some of today. But the ability to actually deploy something into Canvas, and so this tool that I use, and this is just one of the ways I balance. So I lean into AI when I want students to see how well they comprehended my content, or the course content for that specific week. So we deployed the AI Canvas.chat, right? So what it does is it's adaptive quizzing for meaningful content interaction, rather than just a regular quiz that's like choose ABC. So what this allows students to do is actually interact with the content and give an answer, and depending on the quality, or also, because we have a way, and I'll show you a prompt in a minute actually, that comes out of the process that we use here. It actually interacts with the student to help them understand how well they have comprehended that topic. So that has been used now. We've evolved that product, and now we actually have an LTI version of that product. Now that product, being in the LTI, means we're aligned with Canvas in the most secure way. And we're really excited. Actually, Rick started testing it in his class last semester. I'm testing it in both of my classes starting Monday. And so we're excited to see that, but we're also, of course, a little nervous because we're a small development team, and we've created a project or a product that is actively being used. And I get student feedback at the end of every semester, and every semester that feedback has gotten better, to where students say it has been very helpful to them. Now, harping back to Breanna's topic, can students just take the questions as they're given to answer, and can they go over to AI? They can, but I actually tell them explicitly that what we're doing here is actually a prep for another part of the course that they're going to have from me. And I'll talk about that in a minute, okay? So in this case, and I think I'm talking so fast because I'm so excited. I don't want to miss topics here, but please drop any questions that you have in the chat about this. So for this AI interaction, okay, that we create through an adaptive quizzing. I then take that whole session and I send it over to AI. So first I use AI to create it, right? So I take my content, I have AI do a series of prompts that I have, create every step or every question that has the AI interaction, and then that ultimately gets sent over to Canvas as an assignment. And so then I take that when students submit it. Now, here's the key to this, is I do not take the student, their PPI, their private data does not go over to the LLM. So this is where we have to be very conscious about the way we're actually putting data in the LLMs, because we need to make sure that we are cognizant of PPI. Okay, if you don't know what it is, PPI is just your private personal identification, and we are bound by that, as we should be, to make sure we're not doing and sending over that content. Okay, so what I do is I take that session without that student identifying information and I take it over to AI and I have it do a first pass at a grading. And then what I do is I add my personal notes to it. And I'll show you an example of this in a minute. Now, students last semester, I just started doing this part of it last semester, was that the students really told me, and Breanna can pipe up here too, about how much they appreciated that particular feedback, because I do it both from the AI perspective when the sessions for the reviews, but I also do it for their other coding assignments. And so I don't know, Breanna, anything you want to add here?
No, I really enjoyed the way Rio structured her classes when I took them, because um, the AI was helpful with identifying some of the problems that I may have had in the code, but when I had conversations and responded back with like the comments inside of Canvas, I was actually felt connected to the professor because I knew Rio would respond personally, and it was that balance between here's an AI response of some of the stuff that you got wrong, but then also like she opened that door to have that communication and further um, to further my growth as well in the classroom. So I thought it was a really nice balance between both human and AI, and I felt the most connected in her online class than I have in all of the online classes that I've taken so far, where I felt like I was actually a part of the class, not just with her, but also with other students, and um, feeling connected. And I think that touches on that RSI.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that feedback. And we've talked to students who have similar feedback, which is awesome. So that's how I handle the review content, interactive prompting. And again, I'll show you in a minute. But the other thing I do to balance my use of AI and the human interaction is all of my students who take my coding, whether it be SQL, and this is programming language for databases, or they take JavaScript, they actually have to come into a technical interview. Okay. So that means all students, unless they choose not to, because at 25%, some could nail everything else and decide they don't want to go into a technical interview. But I tell you, and I tell them this from day one of the class, which helps set the tone for them to understand the good use of AI, because AI to help them learn. And I really believe to ignore AI, to me, seems, for at least for our discipline, not a good idea. They're going to see it, right? So in this case, they come into a session, 30 to 40 minutes, where they actually have to solve problems. Now, in this case, that interaction that I do with them is beneficial, both from determining, assessing how well did they gain it, but also how well could they talk about it. Because I tell them, listen, even if you might not have the code right, do you have the logic? How did you troubleshoot it? What was your approach? And then if you go to the next slide, Rick, and you can see that accounts for 25% of the grade. In this case, oh, actually, I'll talk about the AI tool in a minute. So now if you look at number 2, here's how I handle it, right? It's a 30 to 40-minute interview. Now, in this case, because I teach 100% online, some of them come on Zoom, some of them come in on campus, okay? But after the first 9 weeks of the semester, they can actually come in, and I recommend they come in sooner because I give them 2 attempts at this interview. Because the idea here is that they none of them, I've never had a student who's done anything like this, because this is generally what you do when you go into the professional area. You get a technical interview. So this gives them that practice. So this serves many purposes in my class, because what it allows me to do is see how well they grasp the concepts, and it lets them practice on that interpersonal connection. Okay. And being able to describe things and their verbal ability, their no understanding the common nomenclature of that particular discipline, right? So, and again, I recommend they go talk to Breanna to do a prep. She actually offers students a prep to help them with that technical interview. So that's the point two here. And then on point one, what I said basically here was that each week I put the content on this, actually giving the how and the why. And so what happens is this moves beyond the static quizzes. And Rick, if you'll go ahead and click on the example of the prompt. Now go back right here. So this is actually what comes out if you want to increase your screen resolution here. So this is actually when students click on every step, and this is just one output step here, is the initial question challenge, because they'll be given most likely 5 concepts questions and 5 coding questions within a particular session, right? So, and this is actually the process that I started creating and that Breanna helped me really refine. So us building this tool was one thing, but also what we really realize is that part of the important thing we need to also do is actually work on the way we prompt the interaction so that we get a more consistent, because what do we know about AI? It hallucinates. So the more our prompt hones in on how we want that interaction to go, the more consistent it is. And I heard that from students so clearly this last semester, because I had some students who had taken it the semester before and had used the product. And this semester, those particular students actually very much noted how much better it was. And the reason it was is because of this particular example of the both the follow-up behavior when they give an answer and the interaction rules. Anything you want to say about this, Breanna or Rick?
I do want to touch on the way that your class is structured, because it really, with the balance of AI that you utilize in the classroom, it sets us up as students to go out into the real world preparing for technical interviews. If I completed your entire course and just leaned into AI and did not comprehend, when I go into the real world and say I have this degree and I land that interview, that technical interview is going to show my comprehension, and being able to have that experience and on that interpersonal level, like Rio mentioned, is really beneficial as a student. So I think it's a balance between leaning into AI, but also especially in the software engineering field, but also utilizing that human element.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
actually, like wielding AI to our benefit and knowledge, right? Instead of like, you know,
Wielding it to our,
yeah, because I was looking at the
I love
chats,
that.
like where people were, I was like, oh my God, like it's just destroying our brains. What's happening?
Yeah.
But like, here's a good example of how we can use AI to kind of help like solidify those. Like the partially correct thing, like I use a lot of Rio's prompts in my class as well. And what's nice is that this helps kind of facilitate the RSI for me because I can see when when AI says, hey, this is not exactly correct, you're close, but can you give me more information or insight, And I could take that now and use that as an RSI tip. Like, hey, like I noticed that you had some problems here, just a quick little tip, like, just give a little more insight into it. And then I have RSI there, kind of giving instead of just saying, good job, great answer, it's more like, hey, I saw that you were struggling here. Here's some extra information to help
You
you
know
out.
what? Hey, Rick, I actually have an example of that. Go back to the presentation. I actually have an example of the output. Go to the next slide. On the next slide, I believe I give a sample. Is it here? I don't think
Uh,
there it is.
Hold on.
There's the
Yeah, sorry.
example. There's the example right there. So the example of the feedback from that process. If you click on that link, yeah, right there. So here's actually, just do viewer. God, I thought I had it right.
That's okay.
You know what? Sorry about that. My bad.
No, no worries.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
it's funny that yeah, so there was going to be overlap, so you didn't
Yeah.
miss much.
Okay. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know when I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I want to present my thing, it has a thing, and you're like, oh, Rio has a thing, so
So you know what? At this point, because we're running about 6 minutes, and actually I did just give you access, okay, to view. So refresh the screen real quick if you want. But also I want us to move into answering a specific question. Did it not show up?
yeah, it did not.
I'll paste it. I'll paste it in. I'll actually paste it in. Okay. Just viewer, do viewer. There you go. Oh, I did it already. Okay, never mind. I go
Okay.
back to the presentation and then go to the last. Okay, so now we're at the place where, I'm no, we're not trying to say have we changed your mind, but what are your feelings at this point? Are they unchanged? Cool, you could say that. Or do you have any additional thing you would like to say here? And this is again where we're going to do some sentiment analysis of that. Letting everybody gear up as I'm getting ready for the next one. Anything you guys want to say while we're waiting for some post presentation content to come in?
Oh, we have Lisa has her hand up.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Good
Uh,
morning, everybody.
Good
I
morning.
use AI in my classes as far as, curriculum development, but also we know it's going to be here. So it's more or less how can we use it properly? So what I do with my students is I allow them to work to not have more than 20% AI. And if they're going to use AI, cite it because
Mm,
that way they're not sneaking around using it or trying to say, "Oh, this is AI," even though you see that they copied and paste literally the Chat GPT page, and you see Chat GPT with the 4.0 in the left hand corner. So allowing them to do that and allowing them to share their experiences with different forms of AI, I highly encourage as well. But it's been engaging, and the students are doing well in the class because they're being allowed to use it versus, oh, it's forbidden, you can't use it, and they're
mm.
trying to use it. You're using it as though they're submitting their original work.
Yeah, that's good. So you set a threshold, you encourage them to use it. That's good. I think that's a good approach. So it sounds like you found a good balance.
I think I have. It's going pretty good. Knock wood.
Okay, cool. 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 Anybody else want to pipe in? I am capturing the. Oh, come on. There's 102 of you.
Yeah.
Remember, this is RAI. Oh, thanks, Karen. Unchanged. Okay, that's cool. Totally cool.
Yeah, I think somewhat talking to Lisa's point, like I think there's a way for us to, if they use AI, maybe even like have the students, well, I don't know, they could probably still use AI to summarize that they used AI, but like have the students, kind of like report on how they used AI and what they did and like, what did they learn from it? Maybe like a report on the report. I don't know, like that's just something I just thought about right now. Um, I know I'm not sure how much time we have. I see you see the screen, but
We have
yeah.
about 5 minutes. We have about
Okay.
5 minutes.
I'm just gonna show this really quick since
Okay, go ahead.
um but yeah, like I wanted to do a World's Fair of like random solutions with code. Um and I didn't get that far because I got a million things going on, but this is something I prompted during our preparation speech. And I was hoping like we're thinking about even like with AI Canvas chat. I know that it's like AI focused, but then I was even thinking about adding that like what we've been talking about, the comprehension, the human element, and like even creating like my own like on the platform. Who knows? This is just a proposal. I just made it up. But essentially having like a reading comprehension or even having like AI generate something here. But like the student like we could track like the student leaving the page. We could track like how long it took them to write the summary. If they try to copy paste, they're not allowed to copy paste. These are like, simple like solutions I've been thinking about in tech to kind of like relieve, just like a lot of the things we're talking about to kind of like, resolve some of these things and make it yeah, just thinking of a new idea. I just thought I'd show that there. Is there any other comments?
I definitely noticed we're getting less comments at the end than at the beginning. I'm not sure what that means, but
Oh, we have a hand raised
yeah,
for
yeah, go
Matthew
ahead.
Hodge.
Somebody else. Come on, pipe in.
Yeah, that was me. Um, I'll keep it brief. Thank you though for having the comments open. That's been therapeutic for me to be able to chat with whoever chooses to chat and have like this asynchronous conversation happening. Something I'll say that I didn't hear mentioned that's worth us all
Mhm.
thinking about.
Mm.
When I read English teachers talking about how they just need them to be able to read and write, and they're not doing that anymore. How does AI help with that? And I feel like English teachers are probably in one of the most awkward positions with AI because you're not wrong. You don't want AI. There are fundamental skills we need to all know. But I think that's an opportunity where we as a community college are going to have to figure out how to integrate more with our community and reach back to the earlier grade levels to students because we only deal with them once they're adults and they get to us. That's all we can deal with. But there's like for this to actually work, because this isn't just like a community college industry problem. This is a
Mhm.
social problem for all of us across every sector of life. Um, and I have family that works in public education, and I used to work as CTE in high school. And those elementary school classrooms are very controlled and locked down on the technology. They cannot use AI in those elementary school classrooms. And I have family that works in IT for school districts, and I mean, they're locked down. That is the place they need to be learning to read and write. And I'm thinking there's room, there should be a grant approved or something for community colleges to reach out and connect with elementary school level teachers and get these fundamental abilities in place so that when they're coming to the college and need to do the college level reading and writing, the foundation is in place. That's the whole point of our public education system is we shouldn't be having to teach them to read and write and spell at the college level. That should have happened. So that's more of just an observation. And I
Mm.
feel like none of our conversations that I've heard across all of the college level are about how do we integrate with society as a whole, because we all of us have to get together and figure this problem out. So that's what I do. I point out problems and I don't specifically offer solutions, but I hadn't heard
Right
anybody
on.
stating that problem. So I'll put my hand down now. Thank you.
No, it's good. Thank you, Matt. That's
Yeah,
good.
with all the research that I did, like I did have a section on that in my notes about like reading and writing and how do we, I guess, our whole presentation was so dynamic and questions came through firing. I mean, I'm excited about it. But yeah, like I mean, it'd be nice to even have like a presentation or like a group where we brainstorm those ideas, right? Like I was hoping I mentioned some of the potential for solutions. And I wish, like I had more concrete examples of solutions that I wanted to go in depth, but like that's something that I would love to see, like educators getting together. And I mean, if anyone
I
has
think that
any,
might be what the
yeah.
working group is actually doing. There's a
Oh,
working
okay.
group on campus that is actually doing this. I've been actually trying to get there. I just haven't had the schedule for it. And Rick, you can go to the next one to see at least the sentiment so far. We're right at time, so if people need to head out, but if you want to hang out and ask questions, we'll be here for a few more minutes. So, but that's a good question. And actually, I think Monique, from our BE area, I don't see her here, but I could definitely ask her about that. So this is the post sentiment. We did get hopeful on there. Beneficial, overwhelming, challenge, tools,
Gary
right?
got
Yeah,
smaller.
yeah, yeah.
Scary, that's fire.
That's right. We'll take that as a win. We'll take the win for the win, you know? Right on. Thank you. Thanks everyone who's heading out. Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I hope you found it beneficial.
Thank you.